Year 11, welcome to your revision on August the 6th, 1945 by Alison Fell. Just a little background about the poem before we begin. August the 6th, 1945 is about the bomb that America dropped on Hiroshima, or Hiroshima, depending on how you say it, on August the 6th, 1945. Only two nuclear bombs have ever been dropped, and this poem details the bomb dropped on Hiroshima, which was called Little Boy. America dropped it for a number of reasons. One was to show their dominance to other countries such as Japan and Russia. Two was to prevent the loss of US lives in a land invasion. And three was to test a new weapon. Before we begin the analysis of structure and language in detail, two images on the slide there are the aftermath of the bomb being dropped. As you can see, the nuclear bomb goes up into like a mushroom shape, and also Marilyn Monroe's skirt, that infamous moment where she stood and her skirt was blown up, are two of the main images described by Alison Fell throughout the poem. Students tend to struggle with the comparison of obviously Marilyn Monroe and her skirt and the dropping of a bomb. If you look at the shape of the two, naturally, or obviously, Marilyn Monroe's skirt and the shape that it is made is a metaphorical representation of the aftermath of the bomb. So just think about those two images, but we will discuss them further as we detail the poem. Okay, if we begin with our analysis of structure, as you can see all the way through the poem there's very little punctuation, and jamblement is used throughout. The continuous run-on lines represent the inability of the Japanese people to stop the dropping of the bomb. It also symbolises the continued pain and anguish their culture has felt since the bomb was dropped. Also, the memories that their culture and their people have carried for years and years because of this one moment. The use of free verse symbolises the freedom that was stolen from the Japanese people when America dropped the bomb. It's as if the use of free verse by Alison Fell is showing us that in that one moment, that one incident, people's freedom was taken away. If we look in more detail at the Stanza Organization, we can see that stanzas 1 and 2, 1 particularly, are about the pilot, and 2, what he sees when the bomb is dropped. This is broken up in the centre there by stanza 3. Alright, as we can see there, stanza 3 stops what we see from the pilot. And then as we carry on, stanzas 4 and 5 detail what the little girl sees. The fact that stanza 3 breaks up the two perspectives shows us that the experiences of the two people, the pilot and the child, are contrasting. What he sees and what she sees are very different things. Also, the lack of punctuation at the end of the poem, as we can see, the poem doesn't officially end. Here, there's no punctuation, suggests that the pain and this experience will last for years and decades and centuries to become. Basically, this moment is unforgettable. Okay, stanza 1 of the poem. In the Enola Gay, 5 minutes before impact, he whistles a dry tune. The Enola Gay is the name of the plane, but it was also named after the pilot's mother. This is quite fitting because later on in the play, Alison Fell talks about the protective role of a mother when we see the child, obviously, who's been affected by the bomb. In addition, Enola Gay is written on the plane's skin. Skin is an image that we will hear about all the way through. We've got obviously the plain skin here and the fact that Enola Gay is written on it. We hear about Marilyn Monroe's outer skin as her clothing is stripped from her waist down by the wind. We hear about the child's skin, which is stripped from her by the fire. So skin here is something that starts the poem and continues throughout. 5 minutes before impact creates a sense of anticipation for the reader, and it places us in the pilot's position as though we are him. We are waiting for the bomb to drop and to see obviously what will happen when that occurs. He whistles a dry tune. Perhaps he doesn't care. Perhaps the pilot doesn't care, and that's why he was given the responsibility of dropping the bomb. And or is he trying to calm himself down because what he is about to do will change people's lives as well as history. Stanza 2 begins with the word later. Again, slightly ironic. Yes, there will be a later for the pilot. Later he will say, later he will laugh. There will not be a later for the people of Japan who the bomb drops on. So there's an irony in there. If we carry on, the whole blooming sky went up like an apricot ice. The whole blooming sky is metaphor, imagery associated with flowers. Is it the idea that the bombing is attractive to the pilot, that when he sees the mushroom cloud go up, he's thrilled, he's pleased? The idea of the blooming sky shows the reader the fact that it does take over the whole landscape, the whole horizon. The simile went up like an apricot ice relates obviously to America imposing their power on Japan, but also the colour of apricot evokes a sense of fire. Could it be that this is the only way to end the war, and therefore for the American people it is quite a fitting end? Later he will laugh and tremble. Again, as a reader, this is your interpretation. Is he mocking the Japanese? Is he trembling because he's upset and he's finally realised the implications of what he has done? Is it sexual release? Obviously, when we hear about Marilyn Monroe and the skirt flying up over her head, she was an iconic woman in that period of time. And is it that he gets sexual pleasure from looking at her and what he has done? As we carry on, surrender for the eye of his belly. It's a personification of the plane, naturally, as it flies over the bombing. Marilyn's skirt flies over her head. As we discussed that at the beginning, it represents the mushroom cloud. It's a metaphor, again showing us the American culture, but also that moment when Marilyn Monroe's skirt was blown up is an iconic moment in American history. Very much like the bombing of Hiroshima. Naturally, they have had different implications, and the consequences are very different. But they are two iconic moments that are pitched together here to show you the dominance of America worldwide. And into stanza 3. On the riverbank, bees drizzle over hot, white. I can never say that word, but that flower there. Apologies. The bees drizzling over the flowers. Obviously, that's a metaphor, and it's almost like a visual representation of the plane dropping the bombs. You can see the bees drizzling. You can see the plane dropping the bomb. It allows the reader to make that comparison. Once again, Alison Fell, from beginning to end of this poem, presents everything as visual. The reader cannot avoid seeing the bomb dropping, Marilyn Monroe's skirt, the little girl with no skin, the bees. But also it compares the natural world of the bees to the destructive world of mankind. And unfortunately, the comparison is very different, very harsh. This stanza, as I said at the start, slows the poem down because we had the pilot's perspective of what he'd done. This stanza breaks it up before we have the horror of what he has done to the little girl. And we are plunged straight into stanza 4, which contrasts to everything we've read so far. Fittingly, it begins with the word later, which reminds us of the pilot, but obviously it's two very different laters. Later for her is obviously the fact that her life has changed. She will walk the dust, a scarlet girl. Obviously, the colour scarlet has connotations of blood and danger. The fact that her skin has been ripped from her body, as we hear in the next line, her whole stripped skin at her heel. The alliteration of stripped skin hammers home the fact that the bomb has taken her skin off her, and as a reader, we cannot even begin to understand what that would feel like. Stuck like an old shoe sole or mermaid's tail, again, simile, imagery of the skin. She is exposed, raw, very scaly, hence the comparison to the mermaid. We know what a shoe sole looks like when it's been worn and worn and worn. So again, through imagery, Alison Fell allows us to see what this girl looks like. And for the reader, this is a very uncomfortable image. Stanza 5 continues about the girl. Later, she will lie down. Again, connotations of death there. Is she lying down because she's dead or because she's in agony? Or is she just emotionally drained? In the flecked black ash, we know again that the colour black has connotations of death. Ash, because of what's been left of Hiroshima, where the people are become as lizards or salamanders. A simile again, comparing her to lizards. Remember, lizards shed their skin and she has lost her skin, so is it that implication? But also salamanders, because there's an old folk tale about how if a nuclear bomb is dropped, that a salamander will survive. Is it the idea that she has survived this? But obviously for the reader, we know that she will be a changed person. And blinded, she will complain, "Mother, you are late, so late." We have the idea of mothers again that we had at the beginning. Is her mother late in the sense of her mother's dead? Is her mother late because the child wanted the mother to protect her and couldn't? Again, it's up to you what you think here. Is she blaming Mother Nature because she was powerless to the bomb? It's up to you what you think there in terms of the mother reference. And your last stanza here. Later in dreams he will look down shrieking and see ladybirds, ladybirds. Later in dreams we are back to the pilot here, and as time goes on, obviously he's become haunted and terrified at what he has done. At the beginning when he drops the bomb, he doesn't realise the implications of what he's done, and in the aftermath obviously he's haunted because he has killed thousands and thousands of people and changed the history of Hiroshima. Shrieking obviously shows us that he's woke up and realised what he's done. We finish with another natural image of ladybirds, ladybirds. We can link this to the nursery rhyme, "Ladybird, ladybird, fly away home, your house is on fire, your children are gone." Clearly, your house is on fire and your children are gone relates again to the people of Hiroshima. But also the idea, the visual idea of a ladybird is red with black dots, exactly as the little girl was described when her skin was stripped and there was black ash all around. The reason these two words could be indented, again, it's up to you as the reader, but is it showing us a sense of loss? Something is missing. The child is empty. The people of Hiroshima have been left empty by what America have done. And finally, year 11. The poem reminds us of our own responsibility. The poem invites us, the reader, to see through his eyes, the pilot's eyes, as well as through her eyes, the victim. They both suffer. The pilot suffers the nightmare that will never go away. The change in language and mood highlights the physical and mental suffering of the young girl, as opposed to the mental suffering of the pilot. The bomb begins with beautifully memorable images of the apricot and Marilyn Monroe, showing that this is a moment in history and it will be unforgettable, for the wrong reasons, obviously. These beautiful images contrast with the actual events and almost suggest that America were unaware of the damage that they were causing.